Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. Lots going on around the league right now for us to get into. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith. Make sure you subscribe. We're heading into a busy offseason. If you're not a subscriber to the YouTube channel yet, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. And then over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us there as well. Keith, a lot going on, and apparently an MVP is going to be crowned tonight.
Yeah, finally. I mean, it's only taken a month since the season ended, but that's all right. You know, it's a month between friends. But yeah, there's a lot of complications. I forget who put this out there first, but part of it was it has to be announced by a night where TNT has a game. There were a couple nights where the schedule was a little weird and they couldn't get things lined up. So here we go. It's going to be announced tonight before game one of the Eastern Conference Finals, and we'll find out. My gut says it's going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I've been on record saying Alexander Walker or Gilgeous-Alexander. Walker is the other one. Sorry. But SGA, I should just keep it simple. Just use the initials. Yeah. SGA or Jokic, coin flip, pick who you feel better about and go for it. I'm not going to scream and yell if it's either one of them.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be SGA. I think voter fatigue with Jokic is a real thing. I also think Jokic is the better player. If you told me who's the best player in the NBA, I would still pick Nikola Jokic. Yeah. Nonetheless, I'm not going to complain about SGA winning it either. He's been absolutely phenomenal. Though, Keith, I don't know if you've seen the discourse right now going on after game one, in which the Thunder beat the Wolves and beat them fairly handily in that second half. But a lot of the conversation right now is SGA being the MVP. Is that bad for the league, given that he's being, on the live broadcast of the game, they called him a free throw merchant.
Yeah.
Is that a bad look for the league?
James Harden won an MVP as a free throw merchant.
Very true.
I'm not going to, complain about it. I think it was Caitlin Cooper who had one of the best things. She's like, part of the reason he draws so many free throws is no one else on the court moves the way he does. And I think Zach Lowe, made him like the equivalent to like one of those things they put at car dealerships where it's just like all wiggly and the air blows in the tube guy and his arms wiggle around and stuff. She called him a human slinky. Like, it is true. Like, he just kind of, I use the word slithery for him all the time. He just kind of gets in these gaps and he's able to contort his body and call fouls. Does he foul bait? Sure. Does he flop a little? Yeah, absolutely. All the best foul drawers do. Everybody does that if they are a guy who takes a ton of free throws. My bigger thing, then I was kind of grousing about this with some friends last night. Every loss comes with officiating was the reason, or injuries were the reason. Apparently, there are actually no good teams in the NBA. They all stink. And it's only because they only win because of free throws and officiating or because of injuries. Injuries happen. Sometimes calls don't go your way, but you also don't lose 26 by 26 because of referees. If they came out and fouled every Timberwolves starter out in the first 10 minutes of the game, yes, I would get if you're like, that's why we got blown out, but that's not what happened. I don't know. It's getting a little tiresome dealing with every game. Like, no one can just give credit to, they were better than us tonight and they beat us. And that's what it was.
That's at a societal level where we're at. Sure. You have to be on one side or another and defend that side to the death and try to push down that on the other side, no matter what is going on, no matter what you're seeing, you defend to the death your side and argue against anything and discredit anything positive that happens for anyone else. That's part of that. But I will say, does SGA flop? Yeah. Do the Thunder get away with stuff? Yeah. But that's also a big part of their defensive identity is they're of the mindset that, hey, we're going to foul a ton and we're going to put faith in the fact that the referees aren't going to call them all. And it works. And that's not the Thunder's fault. If you want to change the officiating, change the officiating. I think their defense is absolutely fantastic. As far as SGA himself, I keep falling back on this. He's not James Harden. He's not Trae Young, who were flat out embarrassing to the NBA, to the point where the NBA had to shift the rules, shift the way they called the game because they were getting laughed at around the world with people seeing the kind of shenanigans that James Harden, Trae Young, and some of these other guys were doing. Grab it onto defender's arm so you can throw your arm up under them to try to get calls, all that kind of nonsense. Look, does SGA get away with stuff? Yeah, he does the whole like straight line drive veer into a defender, go flying the other way, and then throw up the leaner. And he made it a couple of times recently in the playoffs, but he creates the contact and then bounces off. But the James Hardens of the world from a few years ago, to me, that was way worse. There will always be something to complain about officiating wise, but I don't think SGA gets to the point where does he toe the line? Yes, but he doesn't get to the point where he's embarrassing the sport, which is what we saw guys doing a few years back.
The other thing I like with him and Jalen Brunson, they kind of know when they're doing it to try to draw a foul. And when they don't get the call, they don't then go into histrionics on the court about jumping up and down and screaming and yelling that they didn't get the call. It's just more often than not, it's kind of like, I didn't get the call this time. I'm just going to play on. And I'll go. They don't get too upset about it. They both don't like it when somebody else does it to them, which will be kind of interesting if that becomes a finals matchup here, which we've got to get your official finals picks on the record.
Let's do it.
But I don't know. It's just getting tough to. I love being on social media during the games. It's it's like a virtual sports bar, right? Like you're hanging out with a bunch of people talking about it. And I know even I've seen it when you do games live. I've heard you say to people, we're not losing because of the referees. Have there been some bad calls? Yes. But the Lakers are down 30 because they can't make a shot. That's why they're losing. That's the version of, this sometimes. There are times when, sure, it happens, but it's just sometimes you get beat because the other team was better that night or better in a series or whatever it was. So
speaking of which, there maybe some, I don't know, silver lining, I guess, for the Timberwolves. They shot horribly, right? Yeah. I mean, that was for as much as we want to talk about fouls and things of that nature. I mean, look, the Wolves turned it over 17 times. You can't do that. That's how the Thunder win. The Thunder win by forcing a lot of turnovers, and then they don't have to play
live ball turnovers.
Get out in transition. Yeah, the live ball turnovers are absolutely insane. Their steals numbers are through 5 steals for Jalen Williams, and my God, right? But the Wolves also shot 29% from 3 for 12 for Dante DiVincenzo, Gilgeous-Alexander Walker, 2 for 9, 1 for 5 out of Mike Conley.
3 bench guys. I know Reed and DiVincenzo were, I believe it was 4 for 25. Combined, and Alexander Walker wasn't much better, and he's not a big time shooter scorer type. But if those guys are better, I think there's a lot of things. I think if you're Minnesota, you can feel like, all right, there's correctable stuff here. Don't throw the ball away so much. Get a better Anthony Edwards game. He said it himself right after the game. I took 13 shots. I can't be. I don't think he said passive, but he's like, I have to be more aggressive. Than that. You can't win if he's just kind of out there occasionally taking a jump shot. You need to have him on the attack, getting downhill, and then your bench guys need to be better. The Thunder will win the overall bench battle in terms of they're going to play 5-6 guys a night off the bench, but the Wolves, especially with DiVincenzo and Reed, they're better than anybody that the Thunder bring off the bench. You need them to be really good. We said it in the Lakers series. We repeated it again in the second round. They need those guys to outplay their opposing numbers coming off the bench. If they do that, the Wolves are in pretty good shape. If they don't, it's going to be hard for them to win.
Yeah. Their bench guys have definitely got to get it done. Again, these are guys you don't expect Mike Conley to shoot 1 for 5 from 3 in a playoff game. You don't expect Naz Reid to shoot 0 for 7 from 3. And give credit to the Thunder's defense, but I do think there's a chance. I expect game 2 to be much closer. And this was a close game for much of the way. In the first half, it was the second half where the Thunder just pushed down on the gas pedal and blew the doors off the Wolves. But I do expect this series to be much closer the rest of the way. My picks real quick. What are we doing? Are we doing conference finals picks? And then finals?
These two. Well, we'll do the finals pick. We already have our finals picks in there. So we'll redo those when we know the finals. So just your 2 conference finals.
Okay. I'm going to go OKC in 6 over the Wolves. I do think the Wolves shooting bounces back, but I'm going to go OKC. And Keith, I don't know what the hell to do with the East final. Because so here's the deal. The Pacers are my Wolves this year. In that I did it last year with the Wolves. I kept picking against them and they kept proving me wrong. And then I finally picked them and they proved me wrong again against Dallas in the conference finals last year. So I'm just gonna stick with Knicks in 6, and I'm gonna go there. But I've been saying this. This is the way I've been characterized this series. I think it's either going to, if the Knicks win, it's going to be like in 6 or 7. If the Pacers are for real, and they could win in 5. I just think the Knicks will. If the Knicks don't have an answer for the Pacers could win in 5. For the Knicks to win, I think it needs to go 6 or 7. I do think the Knicks will slow down the Pacers enough and ultimately get the win. But there's a world out there where the Pacers just fly past the Knicks as well. So that it's a really, I can't wait for game 1. It's going to be a really, really fun series. What did you wind up picking?
I picked the same 2 teams as you, but I picked them both in 7.
Oh, I love the optimism. Let's go game 7s.
It's it, man. There's a little bit of wishful thinking in there, I think, because we're down to a max of 21 total games left in this season. And I want I start to get a little sad around this time of year because I want as many games as we can get. So I am, a little out there, 7, but Knicks Pacers, a true 50-50 toss up. So I went with the home team in 7, and then Thunder Wolves. I'm a little different than you, and I think this is the one I think could be over quicker than expected if Minnesota, and I said this before the series started, people can go find it. But if OKC can turn them over like this series is not going to go more than 5 games. Right. That's going to be a huge problem for the Wolves. So, but I think they'll get that under control enough. But yeah, the Thunder to me are the best team, and they're there. It's you're still alive from our original picks with the Thunder as your champion. I'm obviously done because I had Boston. We both let's not even talk.
We both got crushed in the second round.
Yeah, we weren't even close. And then we both had OKC and Minnesota in the next round. Neither one of us got it in the exact right amount of games, but that's okay. We got those, so we're doing okay. I think.
Yeah, we're hanging in there. All right, Keith. There's a number of other topics for us to get into, and let's go here.
Fire!
The Kevin Cannon.
Boom!
Let's go. Kevin Durant update. Oh, I misspelled update. That's the point of this
unpaid.
The unpaid. That's the point of the NBA offseason that we're at.
So let's be fair. This guy's been without power for the.
I have been for nearly 48 hours. It was. Oh my God, Keith, that was so frustrating. Frustrating, especially as other parts of my town regained power. And we ended up being like last on the list. I'm like, come on.
That happened to us once when I was a kid after a hurricane. It just the way it worked. They went from like the power substation like out, and like everybody got it, but we ended up going out to my grandmother's and hanging out there a lot more. So yeah, power like you never get major power outages in like times a year when it's like 60 degrees. It's always when it's either 90 or it's like 10. And it's like I don't have heat or I don't have air, and it's just brutal. But yeah, Kevin Durant, let's go.
Kevin Durant update. So up to this point, the Phoenix Suns have reportedly not engaged on Kevin Durant trade talks, though everybody still knows they're ultimately going to trade him. What they want to do is figure out their coaching situation first, which makes sense to a degree, right? I mean, if they settle on a coach, that coach may want to have some kind of a say in, what kind of assets, what kind of players really you target in a Kevin Durant trade. So they're focusing on the coaching front first. Besides, they can kind of slow play this Kevin Durant thing. Like really, it's once we get into the heart of the offseason, we get into June, a little closer to the draft. That's when all these trade talks are going to really, really pick up. So that part of it makes some sense. That while they haven't necessarily started conversations, those conversations are expected to arrive. Although out of Phoenix, it's also some reports that they may not trade him, which I don't buy for a second, but leverage-wise, it's kind of what you need to put out there. Like, well, we don't really have to trade. No, everybody knows you're going to, but you might as well push back against it while you can.
Yeah, and I think this is just you're not trading them at the end of May anyway. Yeah, a month from now, maybe. a month from now will be in draft week, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the draft later. Once you're in draft week, that's really the true start of the offseason. And people kind of came back at me a little with Celtics related stuff where like, hey, when can they make trades? Well, the reality is you can make a trade the day after your season ends.
Yeah.
So everybody but the Thunder, Wolves, Knicks, and Pacers can all make trades. You're using this year's salary, but it's pretty rare. We get about one every 3-ish years or so that happens before we get to draft week. Draft week, everything picks up again. That's when things get settled, especially if anybody's moving to get into the draft or anything like that. That's when that all comes out. So I don't think we're going to see anything major happen here with Kevin Durant for a little bit. So I get why it's maybe been a little slower to develop and those kind of things, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get news. And we know how this works. Every time you get a report like this of maybe they won't trade him, you get the counter report, usually within a 4 or 5 day window that says the Team X is interested and is engaged the Suns on, opening conversations or whatever about Kevin Durant.
Well, and you'll also get the clear pushback from opposing teams. We'll put out there like, oh no, they're already having that conversation, or it'll be something like, Kevin Durant isn't expected to fetch a major. For example, the one that came out today was, you and I have talked about how some contending teams may be interested in Drew Holiday. Then there was one today that was from Jake Fisher. Opposing executives say the Celtics are going to have to give up assets to get Drew Holiday, right? So it's like you get these kind of conflicting. It's the game within the game.
Yep.
And that's part of the why I love this time of year. It's all the back and forth that we see deliberately played out through the media.
And we know we pick up a lot of new followers every year and subscribers throughout the course of the NBA season. Part of what we try to do when rumors come out is, who does this benefit? Why is this out there? Why is this out in the world? Well, let's use your Drew Holiday example. That's out in the world because that benefits every rival team that would like to trade for Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
Because it's, we'll trade for him, but you got to give us something to get off his contract. I have continued to say, hey, if anyone wants to go back, it was a pretty Celtics heavy live show on Monday night that I did. It was all Q&A, but there was a lot of other stuff in there, but we did a lot of Celtics stuff because they were very prominent in the news that day. And one of the things that I've said repeatedly is, Drew Holiday, it's not a great contract, but for what he gives you, for what he's been for teams, he's not drastically underwater. And I don't think Boston's going to be a position where it is, all right, we got to give up all this stuff. It might be, we're not getting the full salary relief, or we're taking back a contract that's a little iffy, coming back our way. But that's kind of the goal here, is to, start reducing their overall tax bill, their overall apron restrictions and the like.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we expect them to do. And we'll have time. You already talked a lot about the Celtics and that situation. But
let me say this too.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. So right now we're in games every other night.
Right.
But once we get to points where there are not game nights, might do some more of those live shows, in the early evening hours, just to kind of get in there. Gives a chance. A lot of people were in there like, this is great. I can never make it because I'm working during the day on the Friday live shows, and or when you guys go super late at night for a trade, like I'm already in bed and those kind of things. Or a lot of people were in there, that were having a lot of fun. So those are fun, and we'll continue to look at doing those. No, we're not going to do them on game nights. They're not going to compete with a game to do that. Plus, want to watch the game,
right.
But we'll look to do more of those throughout the course of the offseason.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Those are always a lot of fun. And we always appreciate everybody who jumps in live with us. Becomes very, very interactive, kind of like a live version of Front Office Friday. And Keith went live because I was still dealing with power issues at that point. But oh my God, so happy to be back. All right, let's jump here. The 76ers at number 3. A lot of reports that essentially the draft starts with the 3rd pick. Everybody knows it's going to, whether it's the Spurs making the pick or not. At number 2, it'll be Dylan Harper. Of course, we know at number 1, it's going to be Cooper Flagg. Number 3 is where the draft starts. Now, Jake Fisher today had some talk about the Sixers could perhaps look to trade back which to me is a bit interesting because there's going to be some guys out there, VJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey, players like that could be there, Trey Johnson, right? Some of these guys that could still be there where they can move back a few slots, and maybe that's something they can look at, but also clarifying that he doesn't think the Sixers are going to say attach the number 3 pick to Paul George and flip that to Phoenix in exchange for Kevin Durant or something like that. They're not going to dilute the value of the 3rd pick by attaching it to Paul George's contract, which unquestionably has negative value right now.
Yeah, that would be a major mistake, in my opinion, if Philly were to do that. That's just, you don't need to get off Paul George's contract so badly that you're getting off of one of the better draft picks you've had in a very long time there in Philadelphia. Yes, they had 3 before and traded it for the pick that was Markelle Fultz, but in NBA terms, that's like ancient history now, right? Like that was so long ago. So we're in a spot where I think if you're Philly, if there's the opportunity to trade back somewhere into the 5 to 7 to maybe 8 range, at least explore it, see what it looks like, because you're still going to get a pretty good player. VJ Edgecombe is the guy I like 3rd best. Right there with Ace Bailey. I'm kind of back and forth on the 2 of them, but I like Edgecombe slightly more. The issue if you're Philly is you already have Tyrese Maxey, Quentin Grimes, and Jared McCain. Do you need VJ Edgecombe? You're not really probably playing you're never playing all 4 of them together, and you're probably not very often playing 3 of those guys together. So that's probably not going to be a thing. So now you get a little, all right, do you go with Bailey or do you move back slightly and get somebody that you think feels a little bit better? So that's where I understand the idea of being in play with that 3rd pick. But I'm just going to caution, in order to trade back, what do you need? Somebody to trade up. And who's going to be like, yeah, let me jump up? Or are they going to be like, you pick whoever you pick and I'll stay back here? Brooklyn at 8 is interesting only because they have so many draft picks that they could kind of throw in. And if you're Philly, it could be, man, this is a way to really start to fill out our bench with cost-controlled players around Embiid, George, and Maxey, all on max contracts, which are going to keep us basically up around the apron for the life of those deals. So that could be a potential thing that makes a little bit of sense there for both sides.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see how that, if that would ultimately play out that way. Now, I do think there's an element to this too, where you would be trading low on Paul George and Embiid if you were to try
100%.
to make those moves right now. Like what if next season Paul George plays 70 games and puts up 18 5-5 or 22 5-5 or so, which is not totally impossible to have. Would I predict it? No, but not impossible. And then you've only got 2 years remaining on the contract, and now you just gave up the number 3 pick in order to move him. And now, maybe people go, well, that's not so bad now with 2 years remaining. So again, I don't think it makes sense for them to attach the number 3 to either of those guys. And again, this is the silver lining for the terrible, awful, no good, very bad season that the Philadelphia 76ers had. See, they're so bad, I don't even want to say their name.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering too, next year's pick is top 4 protected. Not as fun as the top Sixers, but it's top 4 protected. So you've got that maybe down the line. Worry about that. But yeah, I think your best bet is either keep this pick, use it for yourself to get a player in who can be part. Because right, what you could do if you drafted Edgecombe, then you don't get painted into a corner with Grimes. If Grimes, let's say Brooklyn threw a big offer sheet at Quentin Grimes of like 20 million plus, you'd be all right, good luck in Brooklyn, have fun. Let us, wave to us, on your way, up 95. Other than that, it's like, all right, where are we going? With this, you could protect yourself. If you get Ace Bailey, one of the players he's actually been comped to is Paul George. So it could be a little bit of, hey, go there and kind of learn from Paul George, see what it looks like. That then would make a guy like Kelly Oubre, if he opts in, more expendable. Or if you traded George in another deal down the line, now you've got at least somebody else who can step into that small forward spot and play for you. So I think the most likely path is Philadelphia sticks at 3, but there are some interesting trade options that don't involve, like you said, diluting the value of the pick by attaching it to to a Paul George, or never mind Joel Embiid, because that's certainly not going to be a thing.
That's rough. That's rough.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump over here. We talked about him a little bit ago. Mike Conley, again, typically a much better shooter than 1 for 5 from 3, but veteran player, hopes to play 2 more seasons. I'm in on this. I'm good with Mike Conley, wanted to play 2 more seasons. Great. I think he's a fantastic professional. I appreciate the kind of rough game one aside, low mistake type of point guard that he's. I like, the point guards that are, I think of like the Jose Calderon archetype, which I think Mike Conley is kind of becoming, kind of the game manager, low mistake, high efficiency, not going to do a bunch of flashy things, but they're not going to hurt you on the floor either. They're going to be a nice steadying presence. I think that's what Mike Conley has effectively become in the NBA. I don't know that he can be a starter for 2 more seasons. And if he's okay with making that transition, then, then that's fine. But 2 more seasons out of Mike Conley, great. He's had a fantastic career. He was so underrated for so long. And it's part of the reason why, a little bit of me is rooting for the Wolves in that series, is because I want to see Mike Conley get that ultimate success on the big stage.
Yeah, and with Mike Conley, he's got a contract for next year, $10.7 million. So you're in a spot where he's under contract. The year after that, free agent, but you're probably able to get him back for like 9 or 10 million, which is backup range. And I think if you're the Wolves, what the ideal world would be when we get into next season, by let's say midway point, Rob Dillingham is maybe ready to take over as the starting point guard. He's done his apprenticeship for a year and a half under Conley, and maybe he's then ready to step into either a starting role or a much bigger role than the role he has played as a rookie. He had flashes. He certainly had moments as a rookie, but never fully earned Chris Finch's trust. And that can be hard for a young point guard to get there with a coach, especially a coach who's leading a team that has, let's call it, title aspirations, right? Which it absolutely should be when you're a conference finals team. But that's where I think you'd ideally like to go with this is, great, Mike Conley's back. And then that third year, if he's back with the Wolves again, then where you're in a position where it becomes, all right, now you're the backup to Dillingham. And that's, you're playing 15, 20 minutes a night behind Rob Dillingham. And that's where we go. And that's kind of how we finish out. It's like the guard equivalent to what Al Horford had become with the Celtics until they traded Rob Williams. But it was, all right, you're going to start till Rob Williams is ready. Then he started alongside him for a little bit there. And then as they kind of retooled the roster, it became, all right, Al, you're going to move into, ideally would have been more of a bench role. He had to start a lot this year because Porzingis was out quite a bit. But that's what this is. This is you're a very good, solid veteran role player, great locker room presence, love having you around, but you can't be a 70 games a year starter at 30 minutes a night anymore. Otherwise, that's probably putting a little bit of a cap on what you are as a team.
Sure. Absolutely. All right, let's go over here. Keith, we've got NBA draft key dates. What are we looking at here coming up?
Yeah, so Combine is now in the books. So you're getting all the intel dumps from the Combine. Everybody was there. I know Jake Fisher's done some of that. The Athletic guys were putting some stuff out there. Some Zach Lowe had some stuff. You're getting it kind of twofold, right? You're getting some, which is, what are teams thinking? What are their offseason approaches? What are they going to do? Like there was some stuff out there about Denver and what they might do this offseason with trying to how they really need to add depth and all that. And that's breaking news, shocker, right? Like we all know this, but it's not always related to the draft. As it stands today on May 21st, the Nuggets don't have a single draft pick. They're the only team in the league without a first or second rounder in this year's draft. So you're in a spot where you're getting some of that. It's more wider ranging offseason content. Then you're getting a whole lot of draft related stuff, which is, this kid measured bigger than we thought. He's taller. His wingspan's, wider, longer. I don't really know what the right term to use there, but he's more wingspan than we thought he would be. The guy didn't didn't test out well athletically. They did the shooting drill, and the shooting drill went really well, or it didn't go really well.
Yeah.
All those things. And then you're getting some of the reports from some of the scrimmages out there. John Hollinger had a really good breakdown for that. Obviously, the ESPN guys, Gavoni and Wu, crush it with their coverage. So you're getting a lot of that. Then we'll start hearing now, 1 week from today is our next draft key date, which is the NCAA's early entry withdrawal deadline. So it's different from the NBA's. It is May 28th, and it's at the end of the day. If players want to return to school, they have to opt out by next week. So by midnight, essentially, but it's really 11:59 p.m. on the 28th. They have to opt out. And that's a key decision point for probably about 50 or 60 guys that declared for the draft, because what they're going to decide is, do I stay or do I go back to school? And some of them have been very open. They're going back to school because they're getting like $1 million to $5 million paydays through NIL to play another year in college. And if they went through the combine or just through early meetings with teams and found out, yeah, you know what, I'm going to be in the second round, or I'm going to be on a two-way contract, that's way more money than they're going to make on a two-way contract. So they're, content to go back to school, maybe boost their draft stock, come back in. Worst comes to worst. All right, I start out my career as a two-way guy a year later than it would have, but now I started out with $5 million in the bank through NIL deals.
Not bad.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Good work if you can get it.
Absolutely.
So
are we eligible for NIL deals, Keith? Because can we make something like that happen?
Yeah,
I bet we could do a lot more in-person shows if we did that.
Hit us up. Yeah. I'll do a show from your family room if you pay
there we
me
go.
enough. I don't care. Like I'll
break off this part of the desk here and I'll pull up a seat right here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. You can come hang out at my house and do it from here. Perfect. If you want. You're gonna have to pay more. I don't really like people in my house, but if you pay enough, we're welcome to have you here, hanging out with us. And, if you want to pay really enough, you get both of us. We'll come meet you wherever you want.
That's right.
In the continental United States, or full travel is on you if it's international. I know we have a lot of international people. I've always wanted to visit Australia. Why not, right?
Hey, and anybody in Tahiti that happens to watch the show, you want to send us there? Great. Yeah. Let's go. We'll do a show with our toes in the sand.
Yeah, that's it. Live show from one of those bungalows where you just step off your back deck right into the ocean. Let's go. But sharks, that's scary. I don't like the ocean. The ocean scares me.
Really? I swam with sharks once. It was pretty cool.
You're more brave than
I thought it would be.
Plus, Trevor, I'm a big fat guy. I get in the ocean. People are like, whale, shoot him with a harpoon.
Oh, no.
So you got to be careful when you're as big as me. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, because now we're way off the rails. This is because we didn't get to do a show together the last couple of days. We got to get our nonsense
all pent up.
So we're into May 28th, NCAA withdrawal deadline. Then about 2.5 weeks after that, June 15th, that's the NBA's withdrawal deadline. That primarily is international players. Every once in a while, what you'll get an NCAA guy who was like, man, I thought I was going to stick in there, but I'm not. But I'm not ready to be drafted. So they will withdraw from the draft and then play in the G League for a year, or then they may go play overseas for a year or something like that. It's going to be primarily your international guys. But after that, on June 15th, draft board is pretty well set as far as eligible players go. And then you get about 10 more days until the NBA draft on June 25th. Just a reminder, if people haven't been following, it is again the 2-day draft. First round, June 25th. Second round, June 26th. Second round this year, though, is at night. It's not in the afternoon like it was a year ago. A year ago, it was in the afternoon because there's a presidential debate that evening, and they didn't want to go. They knew they weren't going to get people to watch. So
does it feel like the draft is really late in June this year? I seem to remember it being more like the 20th, 21st, 22nd. Like that's a very short gap between draft night and free agency starting this year.
Yeah, and it's always a very short in between draft and the finals. Like if the finals goes long enough. Last year, the NBA draft was on June 26th.
It was 26th.
Yeah, 26th and 27th. So
okay.
Maybe it's always about
maybe my memory just may be spot. Well, okay, it was 2 years ago. It was June 22nd.
Yeah.
It was 2 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's always like that third Wednesday or Thursday-ish is what they
Yeah.
target to get it in there. So those are your draft dates to know, to watch. You're going to start, now the combine's over, you're going to start getting a lot more workout reports coming in. This player's in there. I do want to touch on one other thing with the NBA draft, because this I thought he did a great job explaining it, but it was not the headline that got taken. Kevin O'Connor of Yahoo Sports reported the Boston Celtics interviewed Cooper Flagg at the combine. And people are like, they're trading for him. They're trading up to get Cooper Flagg. You know, who's going to Dallas and all this stuff. How this works is teams submit a list of players they'd like to interview. Kevin explained this quite well, but then Brad Stevens was asked directly about it. And he goes, we know we can't get some players in for workouts because we're not in range to draft them. So the only way we can meet with them legally is to request to interview them at the combine. They got to interview Cooper Flagg. They did so. And what happens is that's how you build your book of this is maybe the first time that your actual decision makers got to talk to him one-on-one. If you know you can bring a player in for a workout, you can do that either one-on-one or part of a group workout, but you're going to get a lot of time with them, right? When a guy's going through a shooting drill, some guys are like, hey, let me lock in and do my drill and we'll talk in between. Other guys, they'll chit chat while you go in between. And that's how they get to know them. You know, what's important to you off the court, you know, where, what was it like, your life growing up and all those things. And they get into all that stuff. But with a guy like Cooper Flagg for the Celtics, the only time they're going to be able to talk to him for really the next 4 years at least, maybe even longer, if everything goes the way Dallas wants it to, unless Nico Harrison decides to trade him when he establishes himself as a global superstar.
Have coffee again with Rob Pelinka, Nico.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. LeBron, when he's 50, he's like, hey, I think LeBron's going to win a title for Dallas. You want Cooper Flagg? Like, that's, not that I'm still bitter or anything, but anyway, that's your last chance to talk to these guys. So that's why teams will do that. Don't get all, fired up and excited if you read, I don't know, Chicago's bringing in Cooper Flagg for a workout. I mean, it could be, he probably won't. What's realistically now probably going to happen with Cooper Flagg is he's probably going to meet with Dallas and that's it. And that'll be it forward. He's going to put his feet up for a little bit. He'll obviously continue to work out and work on his game, but he doesn't need to meet with anybody. Dylan Harper, maybe a couple other teams if they're interested in trading up. Maybe they want to get a workout in with them if they want to move up to 2. But then it's basically after that, it's a whole bunch of guys. But like VJ Edgecombe and Ace Bailey, unless Boston interviewed them at the combine, they're probably not going to go meet with Boston or with Phoenix, who has the 30th pick, because they're not going to still be on the board. So that's why you try to talk to these guys legally when you can. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. That's what's going on here. It's not a sign that anybody's making a trade or anything like that. Just because you're meeting with, it's your only chance, right? And you never know. Like you meet with a guy 5 years down the road, you have an opportunity to trade for the guy, and you've already got some kind of a relationship that you can build upon. That's all teams are doing.
You already started with them. And let's say Cooper Flagg was like, I grew up in Maine. I have no desire to ever live in a New England winter again. And if, I don't want to be in Boston, well, Boston can now kind of be like, hey, maybe we don't trade for this kid down the line if there's an opportunity. Right. And by no means do I think that's how that went down, because he has been very open of like, I would love to play for the Celtics, but that's probably not going to be how it goes down. So, but yeah, that's it. You're just building your book and building that relationship while you can, and not doing it all shady on the side. Like, will also happen if we're
going to happen still.
Realistic grown-ups here about the whole process.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Well, that does it for today. Make sure that you do subscribe right here to the channel on YouTube, as well as the podcast over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate all of you for hanging out with us. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.